Liquor Talk, another new episode starts now. We are on the journey to 400 episodes, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for everybody for supporting this journey. And shout out to everybody that's poured up, got your drinks ready, got poured up, that's tuned in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts at. Thank you all for tuning in today. And joining me today is we have a brand coach here, and she has her own talk show as well. We got Miss Jennifer checking in with us from Ohio. And she's from Florida as well, so you know we got to top it up. Always show love to people from the home state. Jennifer, welcome to Liquor Talking. How you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me. Congratulations on your journey to 400.
Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for being a part of it. Talk to us a little about what you do.
Yeah, so my company is Sky Nile Consulting. We are a marketing strategy and branding firm. And really, what I like to do is help people define their story, tell their story, and build a brand that supports that story. I've been a functional marketer for the last 15 years of my career. So I really got my start in corporate marketing, which is a different beast, but sets the tone for a lot of rigor that I think that I am able to bring to my clients pretty uniquely. But I've also worked in the public sector. I work with large nonprofits, and I've been an entrepreneur running my own business doing this work for the last 4 years, going on five.
So, what got you started in this business, and how you managed to keep it going?
It's really funny. Growing up, it was always go to school, get a good job, and then, life will be easy, which we all know isn't true. But I went to school for marketing really because I didn't know what else to do. I mean, I wanted to be a businesswoman. I just knew that they wore nice suits and smell good. And so that was kind of like my plan and my trajectory. And that's what got me there in corporate. I got my MBA in marketing and strategy. But then I think in the pandemic, things were a little bit weird and a lot of folks were having their great resignations. Same for me. I left the big private sector corporate ivory tower to go work for what I thought was going to be the community. So I worked for our public transit agency here, and I did that leading marketing for a year before realizing it wasn't for me. But I didn't want to go backwards. I figured if I could put a whole lot of work into somebody else's business, I could do it for my own. So that's when I launched my own marketing consultancy.
That's real, and that's how we always feel. And I'm glad you see that, because a lot of us, it's like we put a lot of work in for corporate America and other people's businesses instead of putting it in our own, and we put our own dreams on the back burner, and then we wonder why we get to certain ages and life hasn't really been fulfilled. Like, now, I understand you're from Florida, so how did you wind up in Ohio?
It's a really funny story in the sense that I'm from the Panhandle, which makes my Floridian experience a little bit unique. People always ask me, like, "Are you close to Miami?" And it's like, no, Florida's a pretty big state. So it'll take you 12 hours to get there from my city. But honestly, I had big dreams of moving to Atlanta. And when I left college, that's what I did. I went from Tallahassee, the 850, or, locals call it the 10 to 9. And I left Tallahassee and went to Atlanta, and I was living in Atlanta for 5 years. Loved it. I mean, I had my own ups and downs like we all do, but then I met a guy and I was going to move to DC. My plan was to leave Atlanta, move to DC, get my MBA at Georgetown. And this really cute guy convinced me to apply to Ohio State, which I really wasn't feeling. But then I have a lot of family here. So I thought, I don't know, I'll give it a try. But the biggest thing and the lesson I always tell people is that go where the money is. I got a free ride to Ohio State. And thanks to, Bright Futures in Florida, I had a free ride in undergrad. So I went where the money was. And that guy's been my husband now for 13 years. We've been together for 16 years, but he got me to leave Atlanta to move to Ohio.
Wow, that's a really convincing brother. Hey, congrats on being married for 13 years. Congratulations on that as well. So and I realized that we missed each other because I came to FAMU a little bit later after you
Yeah.
did. So
Yeah.
I realized we missed each other, but it is what it is.
And it's
So
all love between Florida State and FAM. Sometimes I actually was one of the charter members for an organization at FAMU. And
mm,
so I was over there all the time. That was like, it just, for me, it was a great opportunity to have both experiences. And I do
yeah.
all my alumni giving to Florida A&M.
Respect. I do as well. I always
Yeah.
gotta show love to the homeschool, so I truly respect that. And I want people to understand that there is love between FAMU and Florida State, even though some knuckleheads out there will love to hate on Florida FAMU when FSU is losing though. But
I know that's right. I mean, I get it. Like, listen, I'm both a Seminole and a Buckeye, so you have to understand that it's torment for me.
Oh well, hey, the Buckeyes are up. The Seminoles, they ain't looking so good though.
I
You know.
know. I get to kind of again. I get to occupy both worlds.
Hey, I feel that because it's like I like the Hurricanes and I do like the Rattlers as
Oh,
well. So it's like,
oh
hey,
God,
hey, my
that's funny.
family grew up in Tampa. They had me on the Hurricanes. My family
Gotcha.
is, Tampa is a little bit closer to Miami, and my family had me on the Hurricanes, and it was
Yeah,
like that's where it was. So,
it's cool. House divided. I mean, I have a lot of. Oddly enough, my family is also split.
mm,
The other half of my family also are Hurricane fans. So
mm.
I'm not going to admit this. I'm not going to say it's real, but there is maybe a picture of me floating around wearing a Hurricanes jersey. It was I had no choice, but but yeah, we won't talk about
Hey, at least you admit it. Now, tell me
it.
about your little talk show. You have the Grind Live talk show. Tell me about that talk show and talk to me about that experience.
Well, honestly, the thing is, here in Ohio, my husband and I own a social club. A lot of people talk about, things like the Gathering Spot and other clubs like that, membership-based co-working spaces. We kind of started something similar called Grind, and it's about grounding and grinding, having a place to come and be grounded, and it's community for us. And it's a safe space. It's a safe third space, and so we do operate somewhat on a membership base, but it's really a place where we curate community, conversations, culture, and care. And so it just kind of made sense. I was talking to some friends of mine one day and I said, they asked me, what would you have wanted to be when you were a little girl? And honestly, it was talk show host. And they were like, okay, so why don't you do that? And I kind of saw 2026 as a year of doing all the things that previously I would have thought, like, why me? Or, like just things that I would have put on hold. So I've said that in 2026, I'm going to see what it looks like to lean in on my actual dreams. And I thought, well, I do have a space, and I could start a talk show, and I do know a lot of people. We've got a really great, strong community around us, and I put together a team. And I was like, I need a producer, I need an audio engineer, I need all these things, set design, all kinds of stuff. And it led to me putting together a really powerful team, and we've been building Grind Live out to kind of really put it out into the universe, this offering. And for me, it was recognizing that conversations on the internet typically go in polarizing directions, right? And it's by design. And we know that, and the psychology is there. We understand that we are the product because the product is free. And yet we still allow ourselves to fall into it. And I honestly do believe in the dead internet theory, which is that most accounts online are fake. And so then you are out here arguing with bots. And so I thought, well, if I want to have a talk show and I see the pendulum swinging towards a space where the digital space is no longer a safe space to have conversations, particularly cultural and community conversations, because they're watching us tinfoil hat. But I thought, that's where my talk show can kind of stand in the gap. So we have a studio. We've converted our space into a studio, a very high quality production studio, and then we do a live audience. And we're having conversations that we can't have online because some bot will come and argue with you, someone will take you out of context, and we've moved away from the point. And so that's really why I started Grind Live. That's what it looks like. It's not yet completely packaged for the public, but we've taped 2 episodes thus far, and it's very high quality, and people have been asking for that.
Wow, that's amazing. You know what's funny? We got nothing in common because my dreams was to have my own talk show because I was inspired by watching Arsenio Hall growing up and I was also watching the late night guys and how they can
Yep.
like cut loose like late night and well that's how we got liquor talk, ladies and gentlemen. Because hey,
Cheers.
that's exactly how I got to the point of we're producing liquor talk because we want to have those conversations that you said are not like robots. We actually have live human beings, and and not arguing with robots who are just or idiots who are have nothing better to do on social media than to just troll you, or people who are just too hurt to realize they're making a dumb point.
Right. Or
So
just that we can all share information and knowledge. Folks love to say, well, Google is free. Well, Google is compromised now. And so
yes, it
it
is.
really isn't free in that regard, and you want somebody to, if you have a greater goal and a greater objective that you're trying to reach, you should want to be able to share knowledge. And I get it, people have been doing that for so long, and their labor in doing that have been uncompensated. But at the same time, folks are running free full of disinformation and misinformation because they Google it, and they took them to a place that they shouldn't have been, when I could have just told you what it was that I was trying to explain to you, or what knowledge I was trying to share with you. And I could have done that for the greater good, or I could have got, here, go to my Patreon, pay for it, whatever the case may be. But we've gotten to a place where we're so combative that we're actually not achieving the goals that we're setting out to achieve.
Yes, we really are, because we're too busy arguing with people
Yeah.
who don't make sense. It's
Yeah.
like listen, I only listen to people who are in the direction I'm going in, or have knowledge or the experience that I'm trying to gain. That's what you all should be doing, instead of listening to pointless people whose dreams been killed off at some point in time, and they allowed their dreams to be killed off at some point in
Yeah.
time by some kind of minor setback. And I know I usually say this at the end of the show, but 2027, if you looking for guests and you want a speaker, hey, I don't mind flying up to Ohio, just
Come
as
on
long
up
as it's not
here.
snowing. As long as it's not snowing, hey, I'll definitely go on that
Now
flight to come to
listen,
Ohio.
you ain't never lied about that. My dad lives in Tampa, and so when I come down to Tampa, usually come down for Christmas because it's perfect. Go sit out in his backyard and just be in the sun. It's a really nice reprieve from the snow up here, honestly.
Yeah, well, hey, if you come down to Tampa, Gal, hell, even do a Christmas episode, I can get a studio booked. You just let me know.
There you
Hey,
go. There
but
you
yeah,
go.
I wouldn't mind getting on the talk show, because I want to do travel more. So that's the next thing I want to do with the podcast. So, um, you do talk about inflection points. What's one inflection point, and how do you know when you're in one?
So, what's interesting is I think about this as in a variety of different constructs. When I think about in your career, oftentimes folks will come to a moment where you feel like I've got too much invested. I don't want to turn back, but I'm feeling a pull to do something different, to do something new. And I talk to career professionals about how to navigate that, because you're at an inflection point. What is the value of what I've invested thus far, and how do I leverage that moving forward? And for me, as someone that has done a lot of different things, I kind of see it as there's no such thing as failure. We have a lot of fear of failures, but there's no such thing as failure, because anything that you've done in the past helps inform what it could look like in the future. It's just wisdom, right? But then I think, organizations go through that. I think that we're going through this as like a country, as like society. We're reaching an inflection point, and it's easy to ignore, history and just try to look forward. And I think that our younger generations do that very well, in a sense. They challenge a lot of stuff to go like, what makes sense? Like a 40-hour work week doesn't make sense. And they're not wrong, right? But history informs us that it wasn't always a 40-hour work week, it was 80, right? You didn't have rights. You didn't have, our labor unions and the workers fought for what we have today. So it's not as simple as um, ignoring the past. But at the same point, I just think that oftentimes it's probably a part of just human nature and psychology to feel such tension at an inflection point. And my goal is to help people release that tension and be able to step forward without fear, just knowing that you have what it takes, because you do have all this wisdom from the past, but you also have within you the vision to build something new, and to build a new path forward. And honestly, I think that's what's important for all of us to remember at this time. We're at an inflection point where people assume that we're in a tech era or a technology era. And I would say that we've actually surpassed that. We're now in a knowledge era. And so the inflection point for all of us is to determine like what knowledge do we have and what value does that have for everyone else around us. And whether that's something you can sell or whether that's something that can help liberate your mind, that's up to you to decide.
Of course, it's definitely up to you to decide. And if you hit that inflection point, you need to act on it, because that might be a nudge saying, "Hey, you meant to do more, than just be the 9 to 5 job, and you just coming home." And because Mama always said it, we ain't meant to be on this earth just to work and pay bills. You gotta
I
create
know.
experiences.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I agree.
Yes, we have to. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liquor Talk. The more you drink, the better we sound. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts at. Jennifer, what is your favorite thing to drink after a long day of work, or whether you just out on the town with your people?
You know what? As I've gotten a little bit older, this sounds crazy, but I just love some wine. It's straight to the point, and it's nice, relaxing, smooth drink. Now, on our talk show, we always have a cocktail or a mocktail because we're inclusive. Um, of the night. And so our first episode was about the art of joy. And I told a story about how I worked with my vibe curator, who is our bartender who makes the cocktails for each episode. That when I was growing up, my grandmother, she never drinks. She always says that she's crazy enough without it. And when we started, my family, I come from a family of drinkers, except for her. And the thing that she would always comment when she would see us and our eyes were getting a little low and our faces getting a little flushed is, oh, y'all drinking that joy juice. And so, given that our first episode was about the art of joy, we titled that drink Joy Juice. And it was a delicious, like mango pineapple rum concoction. My family is also from an island. So, I'm a bit of a rum drinker just because my family's from Bermuda and a dark and stormy is just kind of like it's just pure delicious gold. Our last episode though was called Legacy as Wealth, and the cocktail of that episode was called Legacy in Bloom, and it was like a tequila and hibiscus drink. So I mean, it was delicious, delicious. Also, a little bit of a tap into my island roots, where hibiscus or sorrel is something that we often drink. So it was great. But I can drink anything. If I had to choose, it'd be wine. But if I'm out and I'm having a good time, tequila or rum.
Hey, I feel that, because I'm not from the islands, but I know plenty of people from the islands. They put me on games, so they had me on that Ray and Nephew. Man, look at here. We had some good nights. And yes, I done had some episodes where we were sipping on some Ray and Nephew, man. Those are some good
Listen,
episodes.
Ray and Neff, that's tight. I like that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, because over here we sip on everything, and yes, we're inclusive as well. Like if somebody tells you they don't drink, guess what? We got the mocktails ready for you as well. Because I do the same thing whenever we doing in person episodes. Got them all guys. They'll have the bottles, or if I have
Yeah,
somebody on, we'll mix up a drink. We do the same thing.
yeah,
So I'm seeing great minds think alike here.
yeah.
So now going back to organizations, you say they lie to themselves. What does that actually look like in practice? Because I see that a lot where companies they will lie to themselves
Yeah.
and nobody and when you tell them the truth, they're trying to show you the door.
It's really hard because a lot of companies, I mean, we don't have to get into just, economic theory, but the reality of it is that companies are here to make money. And I like to tell people, particularly those who are preparing to enter the workforce, that you just need to be honest with yourself and you need to be honest that that's what this is about. So, what tends to happen is you will have a company or an organization that produces value statements, mission and vision, and all those things. I call it, as a marketer, I get it, but I call it flowery language to really to convince you that they're an organization that is worth either working for or buying from. And so oftentimes, a company, let's just say even you start a business and you set out with a mission and a vision that you're going to do X, Y, and Z. Maybe you grow and that mission or vision has to evolve with it, but maybe you're holding on to an old story. So that's a version of unintentionally lying to yourself about who it is or what it is that you do and what you offer. But I think bigger than that is that companies really love to be altruistic when they're in forward facing, but the reality of it is that's not a reflection of what your employees experience or your customers experience, either interacting with your service or purchasing your product. And I think that we will all do so much better in a world where AI is taking over, in a world where, again, the bots are taking over, being just honest. I'm selling you, you know, a drink. I am selling you an experience. This is what it is. And either live that with your employees or live that internally, or also be honest with them and say, look, you're here for a paycheck. I'm here to advance this revenue. You'll get your check if I get more revenue.
Of course, of course. Hey, that's straightforward right there. And I feel like a lot of businesses they don't be straightforward enough, and I feel like that's the biggest difference between humans and the bots. And the bots, so they just control it to do whatever.
Right. Yeah. And, even with that, like AI will convince you. And look, I'm not trying to, I'm very nuanced in my approach to just about anything. At least I try to be. And so it's like there's a reality of that AI as a tool that can help people speed up workflows or help people kind of like process thoughts or, kind of it could help you extend yourself in a way that frees you up to do other things, right? But at the same time, if you are not rooted in who you are, if you don't know yourself, and this is true for people, this is true for organizations or companies that are selling things, it is a very easy way to hallucinate into something else. And so it's just keeping that stuff in mind, and people, individuals, employees, companies, all just being honest about what it is that you're doing and who you're serving keeps you in line too. It keeps you from what we call scope creep, into doing things that you don't want to do or can't afford to do, or honestly aren't as profitable for you or efficient.
Course, you got to always keep things efficient for you. And also, you got to learn how to work with the technology and learn how to work things to make things efficient for you. Now, you do work with a lot of Black women in navigating corporate spaces. Now, I'm gonna go generally here because us Black women and Black men, we got to stick together. So, what do you see Black people doing wrong in the corporate spaces, and what do you think we get right in corporate spaces?
First, I'll say that it's really hard for Black people to navigate these spaces incorrectly, right? Because they're not made for us. And so it's not as simple as what's right or what's wrong. I think it's just recognition of, hey, these bills aren't going to pay themselves. And so if you decide to go the route of working for a corporation, or or in corporate America, or even working for a large nonprofit, whatever you're doing, if your name ain't on the building, my advice to you is just know how the game is played. And that way you can make an informed decision about how you play it. If your goal is to advance, then it is recognizing that technical expertise, i.e., I am a marketer or I do sales or finance, that expertise is only going to get you so far. You can be the subject matter expert of anything and you'll be stuck there, because it'll be like, oh, Jennifer, she's good at making pretty PowerPoint decks, or she's good at graphic design. We'll never advance her beyond that because she's head down a functional expert. But what you have to recognize is that your social and political savviness is what will allow you to advance. But if you're like, I don't want to play that game, then be the technical expert. Just know that you'll be stuck in a place, right? But when you're able to lift your head up and, sometimes entertain conversations that you don't care about. They sitting around the water cooler talking about, I couldn't even tell you, but the latest, I don't know, is Love Island. I feel like everybody watches that, so let me not say that. But like,
No,
they're
actually, no,
watching.
you can say that because I don't even watch Love Island. But continue, so you can say
Yeah, so
that.
you know
I
what I'm
don't even
saying? But
watch
like,
Love Island.
whatever it is, American Idol, I mean, whatever it is that they're talking about, and then you're sitting there rolling your eyes, going like, I don't want to talk to these people about this. Like, just slide in there a little something like, oh yeah, I saw so and so did X, Y, and Z yesterday, right? And that's just enough to where you don't have to sacrifice yourself. And I tell Black folks in particular, like, don't tell these people all your business, because they can't relate and they don't care.
That's a
But they
fact.
will tell all of their business. And so all you got to do is listen and chime in every now and then, right? And then folks are like, oh, yeah, Jennifer, she's so nice. I like working with her. They don't know anything about my work product, but they know that working in groups and working on teams and working in corporate America is about working without friction. And so, as long as you are not someone who introduces friction, and if you can be kind of like the lubricant to kind of keep things moving, then you're looked at positively. And so, it doesn't always require you to sell out, but it is just like playing the game a little bit. And and I would put that back on people too. Like, um, shoot, when Beyonce did Coachella, I came into work. I was so excited. Like, did y'all see Beyonce and Coachella last night at 2 in the morning? And they were like, no, but I'm like, okay, well, you missed a cultural moment. So there are times where I would be able to use my culture as a thing that kept them out of conversations. But
Hmm.
I love football. I love college football. So there would be times where the men would be talking about football. Well, my cousin played for Michigan. So then I would interrupt and be like, oh, did you see the game winning catch against Notre Dame? That was my cousin. And all of a sudden, I'm an outsider, but I know and I've got inside knowledge that they want access to, and I would use that to my advantage. I don't have to talk to y'all all the time. I don't have to be on the golf course with y'all, but I know how to play ball. So I would just show up like that.
That's real. I wish I had known that years ago back when I was in corporate America, because, you gotta know how to play the games because they see you as a hard worker and you're right. They will find ways to keep you in that same position. They'll be like, oh, he's not dressed appropriately. And my mindset was at the time was like, I'm not here to look pretty, I'm here to grind. But if I
Mhm.
had known what I know now, I would have played the part a little better. Be like, oh yeah, I could do this, I could do that. Now, you mentioned you went to Ohio State, and you just said you have a cousin that played at Michigan. How does that family dynamic work out?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because my husband is a hardcore Michigan fan, and talk about so like every year we throw a party for the game, and it's all of us against him. And you know what? When my cousin played for Michigan, it was actually when I was at Ohio State, so I would be at the games in my Buckeye, like my scarlet and gray, sitting in the Michigan side, cheering for him, but wanting my team to win. And so that's what it looks like. And the funny thing about that is that's really what it looks like across a lot of different dynamics, is that people don't realize that we can do both and. I can cheer and support I can support my cousin who's on the other side while still wanting my side to win. And when you really extrapolate that into a lot of different other use cases, you realize that those binaries are kind of holding us hostage. There's a lot more gray area that we have to operate within, and that's okay.
Yeah, I know a lot of black families are like that because I even had an uncle like that. Was when I went to one high school playing high school football. He told me straight up, "Hey, I'm rooting for you, but I want my school to win because in St. Pete, Gibbs and Lakewood was a big rivalry, you know. So it's
Yeah,
like my uncle went to Lakewood, but he was still rooting for me at Gibbs. I know that, and a lot of black families they know how to navigate that well. It's some other families they don't know how to navigate that.
I
They like,
know.
oh, I'm not talking to you. I'm not this, and it's even brutal in the state of Alabama. You know, when Auburn, Alabama goes down, you got people poisoning trees and killing each other over it. It's like that's what I love
Exactly.
about us black people. We can show love even though you are a rival. Because I feel that way about Bethune Cookman people. Because I went to fam, I feel that
Yeah.
way about Bethune. You know, I still love y'all. It's just that week I hate y'all, but I'm gonna still show you love though.
And I think that's what separates us. And I never want us to strive to be like anyone else but us. Because it's
Hmm.
in us to be communal. It's in us to never throw people away. I sometimes talk about having family members that have been incarcerated. For us, it's like they never stopped being family, right? And so when what it looked like was being there for them every day and being there for them when they came home and helping them, you know, reintegrate with society because through love. But you don't always see that in other communities where it's like, if you are, you know, impoverished in any way, they don't acknowledge you, or if you've made a mistake, they don't. It's so easy to throw people away. I think what makes us different is that we look at community as the solution across the board. Like I said, you can look at it could be as serious as caring for those who are more marginalized and who have less privileges, and or as simple as like rooting for the opposite team occasionally because you got folks on there that you care about.
That's true. And they say America's the land of second chances. So why is it that other races, other people are so quick to throw people away, unlike us, and us black folks be so forgiving?
Yeah, we've had to speak multiple languages since we arrived here, right? And
Hmm.
so it's just a part of it's in our DNA truly to adapt and to figure it out. And we knew that the only way that we could do that was together. Now, that doesn't mean that we always agree. It doesn't mean that we always have the same strategies. But I do think that it's just a part of one society prior to us arriving in this country. I think that, history would probably tell us that the ways in which our people really navigated intracommunally was that. And it's that we can't teach that to nobody else because our experience in this country is extremely unique, and the ways in which we arrived here extremely unique. And so other ethnic backgrounds don't have that story, that origin story, and so it's very easy to fall in love with the so-called American dream of get it how you live and just scam your way to the top, and it's all about your individual self. That's just not how we move.
Yeah, it's not how we move, and we've had to adapt to times because it's like, hey, the scammers don't realize that y'all time is coming. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
it is.
all them scams will come up while y'all around here singing Carisha scammers, all the scammers that while y'all around here singing that y'all time is coming. You know, you don't realize that, and
And
I go ahead.
I just really quick to that point, I don't hate every player of the game in the sense that Again, if you got folks in our community that are making it do what it do, I call those workarounds. In a sense that, again, there have been so many walls put up before us. There's been so many things and many attempts to really hold us down and to hold us back from progressing. And we have fought for every little thing that we've had. And, like when we think about legality, even, right, like my husband's a lawyer, so he would be so mad at me for saying it that way. But when you think about what is legal, it used to be illegal for us to read. And so sneaking and figuring it out and trying to learn how to read, even in that time, would have been, punishable, right? And so I think that nowadays, like, if you got to get it how you live, and so long as you're exploiting the system, I guess that sounds horrible, but I don't, I can't support us harming one another, right? But I also can't be mad at somebody who, got a booster in their pocket when I see the president of this country is a booster.
Yes, he the biggest one of them all. He the biggest hypocrite of them all. It's like,
You know what I'm
and
saying?
I've said this on previous. I had a prison reform guest on here, and she basically said it like, you could do anything. We got a convicted felon as the president of the United States, so that should be motivation enough, to go ahead and get it how you live. Because hey, they don't care.
Yeah, and it's just like, the goalposts move. So with that being said, it's always a moving target. But I always go back to, like, in our DNA, intrinsically, we as Black folks, uh, we set the tone for so many things that I don't ever worry about us being wrong or right, because I just know that we are the North Star.
Yes, we are. And why don't more black people accept that and just go ahead and embrace that we are the North Star, we are the trends, we make this shit move.
I don't know. I think it's hard. I think, again, it's easy to be enamored with this idea of, like, people look at these big tech bros and they see the material things. And even, some of and I'm a huge Beyonce fan, but even I'm a fan of the music. I'm a fan of the work ethic. I'm not necessarily a fan of, the choices that they've made as kind of titans in the industry, and, really rare air for Black folks, right? But with that being said, I think I also, it's the same thing. They're not immune to the effects of what this country does to us. And when it comes to, like, trying to change your life and trying to change your family's lives, like, even, like, I think that we far too often look at leaders and look at people that are very successful and assume a lot of them. And it's like, they're just human, which means that they have the same limitations that we have. They probably have a lot of the same insecurities that we have. And you think to yourself, they just overcome it differently. um, but that's where people can't embrace that collective mindset because they're too afraid that doing so will leave them behind. And so we just have to keep showing them.
Yes, we always have to keep showing them. And also, I need those people to go read this book called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, because it tell you straight up, like, you can't really care about what them other people think, and you gotta keep get it how you live no matter what, because at the end of the day, you gonna die. We all gonna die. We ain't gonna be here for forever. So, well, why please people?
Yeah, you got one life to live. I tell that to my kids every day. It's like, you're really only responsible for yourself and your actions and how you react to others. And that is not to say that you always got to be the bigger person, because sometimes you got to let people know that if you want to go low, I'm going to take it to hell. But the key
No,
is discernment, right? The key is the
you
ability to discern where your energy is worth being spent.
Of course, of course. Now, you being the Beyonce fan, what do you say to the irresponsible people out there who will buy the Beyonce tickets knowing their bills hadn't been paid? Because I see
Yeah.
that a lot on social media. Oh, I just paid my rent money, just goes for these floor seats at the Beyonce concert. And I'm like, Beyonce ain't paying your rent. And no disrespect to the Beehive, but a lot of y'all haven't even met Beyonce.
Well, I will say this. At her Renaissance concert, she read my sign, which said that it was my husband and I's 10th anniversary. So she wished my husband and I a happy anniversary. So that was kind of nice because I was like, okay, she said my name. But I'll say this, as we just discussed, we have one life to live, right? And by and large, I do operate from the mindset of what's for me is mine. If I don't have it, it's not for me. And I think that I'm big on putting action in place. And so there are times where I have made trade offs in general, you know, especially when I was younger. I would have spent money on things that didn't necessarily move me forward, but gave me a bit of happiness or gave me something to hold on to, whether that be a memory or an experience or a proof or a picture or whatever, right? And so when you really zoom out, people do this all the time. People over leverage themselves all the time. That's why credit card debt is what it is in this country. And so I don't ever decry people for making decisions to have an experience or a memory that will last a lifetime because money comes and goes. But I do want people to be focused on priorities, right? And so if your priorities are misaligned, then that will catch up to you over time. If you are like, you know what, like I've never seen this person, I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to. The stars are aligning. I'm gonna buy this ticket. I don't know how my rent's gonna get paid, but I've got some fires in the oven, or I've got some irons in the fire. I'm horrible at metaphors, but I love using them. But I've got some irons in the fire to where things might work out. I always lean towards like if I'm doing the work and the actions are there, things will work out. I can take some risks. And so I might leverage myself to a point of like, I'm going to go on this trip or I'm going to go see this concert or go do this thing because there's something to gain from that. But I'm not going to then put the burden on other people around me to fill the gap where I've made mistakes that I could have avoided by just having my priorities together.
Of course, and I totally feel that. The only times I've done that is if I was going somewhere to speak, say if someone invited me to speak somewhere, then I go ahead and leverage that because that's an experience for me, so
Yeah, that's
and,
exactly right.
and also it's a great way for network too. And now, like I said, I told myself you gonna make it back one way or another, so. But I do
And
feel
so
bad.
even if it is going to a
Hmm.
Beyonce concert, make it work for you, right? Like, so it's like if you're gonna travel somewhere, go to a city and meet some folks, figure out who you can connect with. And the easy thing is the low hanging fruit there is that you are going to a show where there's going to be 60,000 other people who obviously you have something in common with.
Hmm.
So do you get to know some people because you never know where those connections might take you? So that's a great point of even when you put yourself in a tough situation, like that's a different mentality to be like, I'm gonna hustle around it anyway.
Hmm. Of course, of course. Now you built a business, a newsletter, and a talk show and a workshop portfolio. How do you know what to say yes to? Because I see you done built it all.
Uh, that's a struggle I still face. But I think that again, it goes back to when you're building a brand and when you're building out things based on your areas of expertise, what helps ground you is knowing your why and just knowing your own strategy for what it looks like to move forward. I love talking to people. I love building things and I love helping other people build things. And so that's kind of the things that just ground me you know, just foundationally. And so what'll happen is if somebody's coming to me with something that doesn't allow me to tap into those things, then it's easy to say no. If there's an opportunity that's coming that can fit into what it is that I'm trying to achieve for myself and for my businesses, then I can say yes. And sometimes it will overextend me for sure. Last year, for my main business, which is my marketing consultancy, I had the best year ever. I mean, almost $1 million year. And I was worn out. I mean, I was crawling to the finish line. So I made a strategic decision that I wanted to, really have a goal for this year to do half in revenue. So I realized I'm not a corporate entity. I don't have shareholders or anything like that. I'm not held to somebody else's expectations of growth for me. That's the whole point of working for myself is that I get to steer this ship. And so I made a strategic decision to plan for half of the revenue that I made last year. And the funny thing is, I'll do more than that still. But it took some of the hustle and the bustle out so that I could be more present for my kids. My husband is the new president of our our local branch of the NAACP here. So allow me to be his wife and be his partner because I took some things off my plate. And so I had to, again, I always try to have my whys very clear and the things that I'm very good at very clear. So it's either supportive of those things or not. And I also just am very clear about my priorities. Like I'm very ambitious, but my ambition is not just about what I do. It's about who I am and who I'm raising. And if there's things that come that are taking away from my ability to be a amazing family member, an amazing wife, an amazing mother, and even an amazing friend, then I have to put them down.
So now, with that being said, are you able to delegate to other people or to other businesses that you know of that y'all work together?
Huge collaborator. I think your shirt says what competition. And I don't
Yeah.
know what that's in
What
context to, but I don't ever see things as competitors. I don't see it as competition. I see folks doing what I'm doing as collaborators. And I absolutely love to share. And my husband and I, our motto in our family is everybody eats. And so if there's anything that I'm working on, like I said, with my talk show, I put together an amazing team and I remind them everybody eats. And then across the spectrum, it's that's just how I operate. Everybody eats. If I've got an opportunity that I cannot handle, then I'm gonna pass it to you. Now you can eat.
I feel that. I feel that because like the shirt does say, what competition? Because I'm looking to collaborate. I ain't trying to compete with you because you know what? People don't realize the longer you compete with somebody, you're gonna tire yourself out faster. It's just better if you come together and collaborate, and help each other out. And because, like you just said, everybody eats. Everybody should be eating.
That's right. It's a race to the bottom, honestly.
And it's sad that's a race to the bottom, because it's a whole lot of opportunity out here, though. So for those who are trying to eat and who are trying to come up, what is the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, and which one do people actually need? Because sometimes I feel like you might need them both.
I'll actually say that what I love telling people is a little framework that I use just around how to build your village. But I always lead with you. I call it my fives. You need to have first and foremost a personal board of directors, and that includes a sponsor. And sponsors are people you only tell the good to because they're the folks that can open doors for you. And throughout my life, I've been able to thankfully identify amazing sponsors who were in the C suite or who were killing it in entrepreneurial spaces. And those are folks that I come to for opportunity. And they know that, right? And so that's a very informed position. Then there's the mentor that you would tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to, and they can help you navigate that. There's your coach that helps pick you up when you're down and kind of gets you motivated and get in there and do that. I have a best friend who does that so well. She reminds me who I am when I'm not clear. Then you have your peer, somebody who's in it with you that you can kind of have those more symbiotic conversations with because not only do they get it, but they're there in it with you, right? And then you got to have a truth teller. That's just somebody who operates from a standpoint of honesty in what they say to you. And that's important because it's not to be cruel. I tell people like you don't got to be cruel to be honest. But it is sometimes I need to know if my vision is bigger than my budget. I need to know if something sounds good to me but isn't commercially viable, right? That's kind of how you build your personal board of directors. And I tell people go find five people doing what you want to do or are doing, and what can you learn from them, and what can collaboration look like for you with them. And then the other five is you need to find five people at least who are doing what you can't do. And so even when I went to go start my business, I realized that I don't know what contracting and all that stuff looks like. I needed a lawyer. I don't know accounting and I don't want to go to jail. I need an accountant. I don't know, necessarily about like HR and things like that. I needed someone on my team or someone within my sphere of influence that could help me navigate some of those things. And I don't know it all. So that's where I easily outsource the information. And so when you really think about that, that's 15 people that I always tell folks like try and have some sort of touch with them at least 5 times a year. That's just an easy framework, and it could be 3, it could be 9, it could be whatever. But just thinking about it like your personal board of directors, the people doing what you want to do, and the people doing what you can't do.
Of course, you know. So if any of y'all listen out there, I will be approaching y'all because I've been like doing the one man record crew for years. And, you know how it is. Like sometimes you just do bad all by yourself because it's like you can't. Because sometimes the struggle is finding people that align with you and that are gonna go get it with you. Because there's a lot of people that say that they want to do it, but then when it's time to do it, they don't show up or they
Yeah.
make excuses.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And I think that again, it goes back to just how we've been trained in this country to get things done. And it's really about lack of trust. I mean, when you can build trust, then you know that you can share your ideas meaningfully with people that aren't going to exploit them, abuse them, and that are really going to help you advance them.
That's real. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Liquor Talk. Shout out to everybody that's poured up and tuned in. I appreciate it, y'all. Y'all are wonderful. I hope y'all enjoying this conversation. Keep enjoying this conversation as we hit the home stretch. Now you talk about telling organizations about telling the truth. What happens when they're not ready to hear it? Because let's be honest, nobody wants to really hear the truth about themselves. And, sometimes some people can take it, and then some people they will be in denial, and then some people are just outright dismissive.
Yeah, it's a couple things. Honestly, when people hire me, I let them know that that's the role that I'm going to play. And it's honest and it is truth telling and it's informed by more than just, data. It's informed by lived experience and a cultural perspective, even, right? I've had instances often where I was a Fortune 100 company, in my opinion, made a mistake in a communication that went out internally. And this was in during the pandemic when social justice was at the forefront of a lot of things for us as a country. And the company, honestly, I approached it as a business case. I knew who I was talking to. I'm talking to C-suite leaders, and I explained to them that the communication that they had produced was actually harmful to the bottom line because you have employees that are going to read this and take away from it that they themselves don't matter to the work that's being done. And what does that look like? There's risk to your talent pipeline, there's risk to your profitability, there's risk to your reputation. When I identified all of that stuff, certainly they didn't want to hear that. But it was even my upfront approach that made it difficult for them to ignore. And in particular, I deal with that a lot with companies. And so my process is I'm going to show you the data. I'm going to make a business case, or I'm going to make a compelling impact case, or I'm going to make a compelling case from a storytelling perspective, and I'm going to prove it out. You have a couple options. You can either put into place the things that I'm telling you to either move forward with and strengthen your internal capabilities and competencies to then show up better externally, or make your external messaging better, or you could just do nothing. And then I want to be clear what the cost of doing nothing is. And so then the choice is yours. I did my part.
That's real. And now, how many of them choose to do nothing and then call you once
Yeah.
shit hit the fan?
Well, funny thing is, if they choose to do nothing, they typically don't call me back because nobody wants to be told, I told you so. And that's okay. I've already told you what the cost of doing nothing is. And if you pay that cost, then you'll figure it out from there. But if you've and you'd be, I mean, I guess you wouldn't be surprised, but a lot of people do choose to do nothing because that is hard. But I've had companies and organizations that have put their trust in me. And I've been able to read the tea leaves of what's coming. And I said, if you allow me to put in place um, my recommendations, then I then will bear the cost of if it doesn't work, right? You can blame it on me. But those organizations that have put their trust in me and my guidance and my recommendations, um, they have seen the value and the fruits of that.
That's what's up. That is definitely what's up. And I think people should definitely hire you. Now, going back to individuals, what does it mean to outgrow your story, and how do you build a new one without losing yourself or your mission within the process? Because we see some people, they will make it to the top, they've ascended, but then they get up there and they forget about what got them there. They might forget about the people that got them there, and then you have people who remember them, but they'll have their bad taste in their mouth because it's like I was with you when you started and you made it all the way up there and you just forget about people. And personally, I said that's something I fear, but I tell myself all the time that that's not going to happen because I'm going to remember the ones that were with me when we were shooting in the gym or trying to make things happen. So I might have that mindset, but other people listening to this may not have that mindset.
Well, I think it's a couple things. One, and this happens to everyone, whether it's you own a business, whether you're, say, for example, a content creator or an influencer, or just even who we are as people. I think that the first piece is take everyone with you. It's hard to forget folks when they right there, right? It's hard to forget where you come from when you make it an intentional choice to stay there or go back, right? That's my biggest thing, is just don't leave people. I'm from, you know where I'm from. We talked about where I'm from. And certainly when I was younger, I wanted to get as far away from there as possible. But as I've grown older and my wisdom has grown, I go back, I see it differently. I don't see just, the I don't want to say this, but like I tell people all the time I'm a hillbilly, but I don't see just the hicks that I grew up with, right? I see people who work hard and who are resilient and who have the deck stacked against them. And so I always like to be there so I can continue to advocate for them as I climb. I think the other piece is just knowing who you are, right? You can't be knocked off your pedestal when you know who you are, and nothing can take you from that because that money can't buy all of that, right? You when it comes to forsaking those around you or forsaking where you come from, like money can't buy who you are on the inside. I think the other piece to that is seeing growth as a part of the story and evolving that. And that's where I like to help people is instead of seeing your past or even some of your mistakes as something that you have to put down, like it's a part of the story and carry it with you, right? That's not a failure. And like when I tell people all the time, I failed in corporate America. I was very successful, but I realized it wasn't a good fit for me, so I left. And that was an intentional choice that I was able to make, and I'm able to carry that with me. I then moved to the public sector, and it was absolutely a horrific experience. And I could have easily said this is a mistake or a failure, but instead it was just a lesson. And I learned so much. And so for any one of us, it's about not seeing our story as like little containers or little blocks that you put away, that you just build upon them. And honestly, I think it just remaining in touch is the biggest thing. When people say someone is out of touch, that's what they mean. Like you've put something away and you've tucked it away and you don't return to it. And I'll be honest, like sometimes our lived experiences don't expose us to all of the things, and that's what I would just call a blind spot. And so when those blind spots come up, it's just honoring and recognizing I have a privilege that kept me from seeing that. And now that I see it, now that you're telling it to me, now that I hear it, allow me to just listen, allow me to learn so that I can use my privilege to advocate on your behalf. It's okay to be like, I hadn't considered that. I wasn't aware of some of these things that are happening, particularly because I am in a different space in my life or in my career, but being open to listening and being open to correction and being open to leveraging what I do have is going to be the difference.
Of course, of course. Now you mentioned that you help people see themselves more clearly. What do you see in most people that they don't see themselves?
You know, speaking again just for my own self, and that's, we call this in marketing, you never do anything as a sample size of one. So I don't say this as like a projection, but the thing is, like, I recognize the ways in which I get in my own way. I know the things that I'm saying in my own head when I'm talking to other founders, when I'm talking to other leaders. My gift is I can hear by what they're saying what the things in their head are telling them. And so my goal is to take your vision and help you make it tangible and replay back to you the way you show up in the world. And so no matter what you're saying to yourself, no matter what your mind is telling you that kind of keeps you in a specific place that prevents you from moving forward, I'm there to kind of clear that block and make it tangible. If you're like, there's no way I can get to this place, I'm going to help you determine the exact steps to put one foot in front of the other to get there. I think sometimes we often look at it as if I'm not there in 2 months, then I failed. My goal is to help you realize that maybe it wasn't a 2 month process. It was 6 months, 8 months. So it's like, let's set a goal for 2 years out, and you might surprise yourself and get there in 6 months, as opposed to set the goal at 2 months and now you're a failure because you fell short.
Yeah, if you think something's gonna get done in 2 months, then it's like you're definitely gonna fail because it's gonna feel rushed. Whether if you give yourself 2 years, that means you give yourself time to go ahead and build it out, and everything is gonna come together. Because if it feels rushed, then of course it's not going to work.
Right. And that's easy peasy. So, but it's like, it's hard for people to see that. And again, my goal is always to hear the things that people don't always want to say out loud just because I understand.
Now, what should people do before hiring a marketing firm?
That's a great question because let me tell you, the first thing is recognize that marketing firms are not cheap. Having someone do it for you, do it with you is not cheap. And so that's the first thing. And so do your research and be very clear on what it is that you are asking. And do some research on what the difference between marketing, branding, public relations, communications, those are all part of, an ecosystem, but they're different sides of that. And so oftentimes you will waste an agency's time if you're not clear on what you're asking them and you're not clear on what your goals and objectives are. And if you're going to a marketing agency or a firm or even someone who's freelance marketing and you're asking them to do something that gets you measurable results, you've got to have the business idea, the business objectives, and the business infrastructure to support that. Because when we start asking questions and we start digging in, oftentimes I find that that's actually what the client is asking me to do. And now I have to charge you for strategy because you thought you had it, but what you really had were just a list of tactics. And so oftentimes, if you don't have the strategy, the tactics that you're giving me are guesses and they're probably not the right ones. But if you bring me in to help you build the strategy, then we can probably figure out what the right path forward is. And oftentimes it's not what you originally thought.
Of course, of course. Now, of course, we are in an age where everybody's asking Chat GPT these questions. So, what do you think is the biggest difference between talking to an actual human and talking to Chat GPT about the marketing strategies, about all that stuff?
I think that if you were to ask the robot I think instead of asking the robot what to do, you should ask the robot what to ask. Because the reality of it is it's 2D. And I'm not like an IT person or a tech person or anything like that, but as a human, I am 3D. I move through the world. I know the nuances of how people act and behave. You know what I'm saying? If you want to do market research or something like that, and you ask the robot, it's what I call it. Like if you ask the robot, like, give me the sources that I can go deeper to learn these things, and show your work, then you can validate what you're receiving. But by and large, like as a human, I know human behavior and not from a textbook. But it's like when I had my kids, I told the doctor, I said, well, I read all these books. And the doctor told me, well, that's great, but the baby didn't read all those books. And honestly, I went home and I took the stress off of what these books were telling me to do to be a good parent. And I just trusted my instincts. Because again, that's a part the robot can only tell you so much until you move out into the world. Like the robot can tell me all the steps to brain surgery, but that's still not going to make me a brain surgeon.
hmm That's real. That's so real. So you do need that human element as well. So I definitely agree with you on that. How can the people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I mean, you can follow me on pretty much any. Well, I'm only on Instagram now. JG runs the city, and from there, you can kind of see some other things about my business, Sky Nile Consulting, or our social space here in Columbus, Ohio, which is called Ground and Grind, and our talk show Grind Live. You could also find me on LinkedIn. I'm Jennifer Walton, and I typically say there's probably a lot of us, but I'm the black one, and I'm the one that's all about my business. So yeah.
Of course, of course. Now, Jennifer, before you get out here, give people a call to action or something they should be doing after listening to this episode.
Honestly, do a gut check. Figure out what your life vision is for yourself, and then figure out then how does your career vision ladder up to your life vision, and then how are you showing up in your communities, in your companies, in your work. And if that is all in alignment, congratulations. If it's not, give me a call.
Yes, that's real. Hey, Jennifer, I want to thank you for blessing the liquor talk with your presence. Thank you for spending your afternoon with
Cheers.
me, having a drink with me. I definitely appreciate it. I hope this is not our last conversation. I would hope to get to Ohio and come up there and be on your talk show.
Yeah.
And also, if you come down to Florida, I'd love to collaborate with you again. Because I might need to hire you my damn self.
Yeah, I'll reach out when I'm down in my hometown. Yeah.
Yes, please do. Thank you for being here, and thank you to listeners for checking out this latest episode of the Liquor Talk Podcast, where we're tuned in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts at. Please tell us what you think. Like, comment, share this. Go tell a friend to pour up with us, because you're the ones keeping the dream alive, ladies and gentlemen. So go tell a friend, and tell that friend another friend. And if you're looking to collaborate, come on down. We'll open the door around here. We'll open the door to everybody, because we do run it like a late night talk show. So you never know who's gonna come on next. So thank you all for tuning in to the Liquor Talk Podcast. Shout out to everybody. I am your man Victor. Until the next episode, peace.